This episode is brought to you by VPP Simplified. Now you can get element by element tracking and guidance for your VPP journey. Every aspect of the VPP requirements in one easy-to-use interactive spreadsheet. It explains every sub-element in detail, contains an easy-to-read stoplight so you can track current status for each sub-element. It provides you with a 3-step verification for completion of each sub-element. There's even a notes section for you to compile language that will eventually be used for your VPP application. It even comes complete with graphs to show current state and track your progress moving forward. Look, achieving VPP star status can be tough, but understanding what it takes to get there can be simplified. This VPP Gap tool will help you do that. Go to vppsimplified.com for more information.
Welcome to the Safety Pro Podcast, where we help you manage workplace safety one episode at a time. And now, your very own Safety Pro, Blaine J. Hoffman.
Welcome to another episode of the Safety Pro Podcast. In this episode, we're going to tackle, something folks might find a little boring, but it is something we have to be concerned with in the workplace, as, we often see citations related to this issue. The issue I'm talking about is workplace posters and postings. Most public and private employers, they're going to fall under at least some of the posting requirements under federal, state, or local laws, regulations, and executive orders. These workplace posters, also known as labor law posters or notices, they're generally meant to make employees aware of their rights under certain laws or executive orders, or otherwise impart information about the employer and or the law and that executive order that they need to know about. Employers need to be aware of the posting requirements that apply to them so that they can comply. Because, as I said, not having the appropriate information posted may result in citations and fines. So some of these posting requirements, they have, of course, penalties associated with them for noncompliance. Just one example, failure to post federal employment law posters could potentially result in fines of over $32,000. That's insane for a poster. But it's important because the information that the poster conveys, that's what the federal government is said to be after, is we want to be able to notify folks of the information in the posting. So, in addition, it's important to be in compliance with posting regulations because, the posters, they can help the employer prove that it has made the employee aware of their rights under the law. So that's really sort of where we should focus our conversation is that's the minimum. The minimum is, we posted this in the break room or the lunchroom or the bulletin board, the employee communication board, some common place where most information that you want to share with employees is posted. That's going to be your first answer when you're asked, did you make employees aware of their rights? Yep, we hung the posting. So you can always improve on that, but at a minimum, that's the requirement, postings. So we're going to go through some of these. Now, the posters, we're going to talk about postings in a minute and the difference, but a poster, that a private or public employer needs to display will depend on its location. It depends on the number of employees who work for the employer. And it also is driven by your industry type or even some contracts that under which you perform, like federal contracts. There's some posters and notices depending upon if you're a federal contractor, things like that. So the scope of applicability is specified in the posting law, regulation, or executive order that impacts each of these types of industries. I'll just give you a few examples. So the federal government enforces workplace posters under regulations and executive orders for poultry products inspection regulations has postings. Temporary employment of foreign workers in the U.S. There are So if you have a workplace, and maybe in the tech industry, maybe in manufacturing, where you have temporary employment of foreign workers in the U.S., maybe under contract, 20 CFR 655, there are requirements for postings under that regulation. Construction and maintenance, 23 CFR 635, some federal posting regulations for them. Labor standards for federal service contracts. Establishing minimum wage for contractors. There's a posting requirement for that. That's 29 CFR 10. Migrant and seasonal agriculture worker protection. That is 29 CFR 500. There's some posting requirements there in the workplace. 29 CFR 516 has some records to be kept by employees and has that posting requirement there. Family Medical Leave Act of 1993, that's 29 CFR 825. 29 CFR 1904. I think most of us know that one. 1904, what's that one, folks? Recording and reporting of occupational injuries and illnesses. So we have a variety of federal regulations that apply to a variety of employer types that have different posting requirements. You're supposed to know what they are. So I'll give some details on a couple of examples. So one is a no-brainer. This one we see a lot. The EEO is the law poster, and that's 41 CFR 1.42, yep. This poster applies to contractors and subcontractors who hold contracts or subcontracts with the federal government in any 12-month period that have a total value of more than $10,000. So I think, if you're a federal subcontractor or contractor and you have a contract worth $10,000 or more, you're going to fall under this 41 CFR 60-1.42. Here's a good one, the Employee Polygraph Protection Act. It applies to any employer engaged in or affecting commerce or in the production of goods for commerce. It does not apply to federal, state, and local governments or to circumstances covered by the National Defense and Security Exemption. 29 CFR 525.14, this one may, mostly HR folks this one's going to ring a bell for you. Employee rights for workers with disabilities paid at special minimum wages. Every employer of workers with disabilities under special minimum wage certificates authorized by any of the following laws have to display a poster described by the Department of Labor's Wage and Hour Division, and it explains the conditions under which special minimum wages might be paid. So the Fair Labor Standards Act, that's Section 14C, McNamara and O'Hara Service Contract Act, the Walsh-Healy Public Contracts Act. So the poster has to be posted in a conspicuous place on the employer's premises where employees and the parents or guardians of workers with disabilities can readily see it. Another one is the employee rights under the Davis-Bacon Act for laborers and mechanics employed on federal or federally assisted construction projects. There is a poster required under that one. So it's the Davis-Bacon and Related Acts and the Contract Work Hours and Safety Standards Act. There's the employee rights under the Fair Labor Standards Act for federal minimum wage poster. A lot of us have seen that one. There's one that also applies to the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, the American Samoa. So there's different. They have their own specific part under that CFR, 29 CFR 516.4. And I mentioned this earlier, the employee rights under the Family and Medical Leave Act, that has to be posted to public agencies and public and private elementary and secondary schools and private sector employers who employ 50 or more employees in 20 or more work weeks and engaged in commerce or in any industry or activity affecting commerce. So, and there's some specifics under that reg. That's 29 CFR 825.300 or .402. We have employee rights under the H-2B program, the Immigration and Nationality Act, the employee rights under the National Labor Relations Act, 29 CFR 471.2. A lot of us have seen that one. If you've ever been a federal contractor, you see a lot of these driven by, whether or not you have a contract with the federal government. The Equal Employment Opportunity is the law poster. So anyone with 15 or more employees and covered by the Non-Discrimination and Equal Employment Opportunity Law is required to post this poster. It's got to be seen by employees. It's got to be in a conspicuous and prominent place. 29 CFR 1601.30. That's, where one of them is. I think 1627.10 and 41 CFR 60-1.42. Another poster, one we've probably all seen, 29 CFR 1903.2. Which one is that one, folks? Job Safety and Health. It's the law poster, the OSHA 3165 poster. OSHA 3165 isn't the regulation, it is the document number. It applies to all private employers engaged in a business affecting commerce. Boom. The image of all the workers standing there across there, and it says it's the law at the top, and it's the toll-free number to call OSHA. That's got to be posted. So some of those posters might be obscure to you. It may not apply to you. Some of them apply to everybody. The bottom line is it's important to understand because all it takes is one inspection or regulator to come through, and you're missing one or more posters that are supposed to be hanging up somewhere. And I like this one if it's covered with something else. You've got these posters on a bulletin board. Somebody's selling their old Chevy and sticks the flyer up and covers most of a poster that's required by law. You're probably going to get dinged for that. It starts at about $32,000 or so. That's a pretty big chunk of money for a poster. Now let's talk about other postings, not just the posters that are informative, but then there are some postings in general that we have to have in the workplace. So, every employer is required to post the OSHA Job and Safety and Health. It's the law notice in the workplace. That's an example of a notice, right? That we all have to comply with. Something else that falls under postings along with that are postings of citations. That's 29 CFR 1903.16. So upon completing an inspection in your workplace or at your job site, an OSHA compliance officer may issue the citations. Actually, the area director issues citations for hazards identified during the inspection. These are alleged violations of the standard. When you receive the citations, you have to immediately post the citation at or near the place where the violation occurred, and it has to remain posted for 3 working days or until the unsafe condition has been corrected, whichever is longer. Even if you're going to contest or you're going to the informal conference, you still have to post it during that time. I get this one a lot. Well, what if there are no citations generated from the inspection? Sure. Okay. But let's go with that. You'll receive a notice indicating that no citations were issued, and you got to post that notice for 3 working days. Your OSHA 300A summary. Anybody with 11 or more employees, right? You're required to maintain a log of work-related injuries and illnesses that fit the definition of a recordable injury under the Occupational Safety and Health Act. So under the 1904 standards, you're going to determine whether or not you have an injury or illness and whether or not it's recordable. Determining work-relatedness, I did an episode a while back on that one. That's actually one of the more popular ones. It gets high number of downloads. Obviously, a lot of us out there scratch our heads on some of these injuries as to whether or not it's work-related in the sense that it should be on the 300 log, or if it's exempted as, some like personal errand or something, or off the clock, they hadn't clocked in yet, or they're working out at the gym during their break and they got injured, but it's on our premises. all those types of questions. Look for that episode on, is that injury or illness work-related, how to determine work-relatedness, and that'll give you some good insight there. But there is a summary that you have to post every year, so it's an annual summary. You have to post it in the workplace or at the job site in a location where the employer normally posts employee notices, is what this one says. And that's from February 1 through April 30, right? So May 1st, you can take that thing down. Another good one, the Right to Know poster. This is actually a poster, but it's something that, when we talk about HAZCOM, 1910-1200, that the HAZCOM standard itself does not require a notice to be posted concerning the worker right to know. However, this is why I'm bringing this up. A number of state worker right to know laws and regulations do require a notice or a sign to be posted informing your employees of the availability of additional information from the employer on toxic or hazardous substances in the workplace. You've got to check your local OSHA office or with your state regulators on whether or not your state requires any other type of worker right to know notice that has to be posted for you. Here's one, 29 CFR 1910, and that's 1200G. Safety data sheets for the specific chemicals that are on the job site must be kept at the job site and be immediately available to workers. Okay, this doesn't mean that SDSs have to be posted on a bulletin board, but they might be in a notebook or 3-ring binder hanging on a wall, but they have to be posted at the job site somewhere. And posted in this sense of the term is they've got to be available somewhere. So that has to be, obvious that there is a binder somewhere in the job trailer or somewhere on the work site. There is an excerpt from OSHA's letter of interpretation from 1999, going way back, clarification of systems for electronic access to, in this case, back then it was MSDSs. The question was, if an employer maintains an electronic system as the primary means of providing material safety data sheets in the workplace, is it acceptable for employees to obtain hazard information verbally over the phone if the primary system is temporarily inoperable, meaning you can't access it? Is it acceptable for employees to get, hazard information over the phone in case of other types of emergencies? So OSHA said, in the event of a power outage, equipment failure, or other quote-unquote emergency involving a foreseeable failure of the primary electronic system, OSHA would consider telephone transmittal of hazardous information to be an adequate backup as long as the MSDS is delivered to the site as soon as possible. So in emergencies other than failure of the primary electronic system, the MSDS must be available and they would consider telephone transmittal supplemental to the data sheets. So employers who produce, use, or store hazardous chemicals at a multi-employer workplace situation, such as multiple contractors or on one job, or a contractor doing work within a facility, inside the facility, they must make MSDSs available to employees of the other employers. This can be done by making MSDSs available at a central location in the workplace. The MSDSs could be posted, if there aren't too many, of course. So OSHA kind of, laid down some allowances for job sites. But it's clear the expectation is to have a physical copy somewhere on the job site available for those workers. All right, you also got to post emergency numbers in areas where 911 service is not available. The telephone number of physicians, hospitals, or ambulances need to be conspicuously posted at your job sites. That's 29 CFR 1926.50F. And 29 CFR 1926 are the construction regulations. So in a nutshell, I wanted to touch on some of the minimum posters and postings that you would probably fall into if you're an employer in this country that you're going to have to comply with. Federal contractors, there's like a whole list of other ones that you've got to post. But the bottom line is like anything else we talk about on this podcast, as employers, it's up to us to understand what the regulations are and what we're required to do under those regs. So, hey, there's so many to cover. I couldn't cover all of them, but I want to hear, what's the craziest posting that you've ever seen or been required to post somewhere in your workplace or in your past? Shoot me an email. I want to hear those, and we can highlight some of those. I want to stop and take a moment to talk to you about our partners in safety. whosonlocation.com. It's a simple way to manage people. That's visitors, contractors, and employees signing into and out of your sites. If you need to know who's authorized to be on site, who's due on site soon, who's on site right now, or who was on site earlier, try Who's on Location's visitor management. You can set visitor policies, get alerts when visitors have arrived. You can issue passes, pre-register visitors. You can set up visitor kiosks to have them self-sign in. You can use email and SMS text notifications. You can run reports on visitors. There's so much more you can do, and that's just with visitor management. I've talked a lot about Who's on Location, the evacuation management piece, but the visitor management's one I haven't talked a lot about up to this point, but it needs to be highlighted. Safety and security, it starts with knowing who's on site, not just your employees, but also visitors and contractors. So look, here's what I want you to do. Go to whosonlocation.com. You can sign up for a 30-day free trial. You get access to all of the features, not just the visitor management, all of the features. Give it a try for 30 days. You're going to be amazed when you start to go to a digital solution for this type of activity instead of the old clipboard or the book where people sign in. Honestly, what are you going to do with that? If an emergency happens, alarm goes off, there's a fire, there's smoke, people are yelling, the alarm's going on. Who's going to grab that book and run out and then thumb through the pages to see, no, they're not here, they signed out, and go, who's still here? You've got people coming and going throughout the day. You're going to have to go back through those pages and try to figure out who's still here today and didn't sign out. I'm just saying, I've seen books that are the size of, world maps, that you open up and sign. I've seen clipboards that are hanging somewhere. But the bottom line is, when you go to a digital solution, anybody with a cell phone will be able to get to this information, because Who's on Location, as a web app, it operates on iOS, Android, and Microsoft or Windows devices across the board. So go to whosonlocation.com. Get a 30-day free trial. No credit cards required, by the way. Sign up for a 30-day free trial and roll it out at your workplace and give it a try and see what it can do for you. You will not be disappointed. You also need to know about Mighty Line Floor Tape, the official floor marking floor sign company of the Safety Pro podcast. Very proud to have these folks on board as partners in safety. They know how important safety is to your organization, and the breadth of the Mighty Line product line covers everything you need to implement a 5S system for the increased productivity of your facility and the safety of your workplace. Now, their floor signs, they're an awesome product to regulate workplace traffic. These signs are customizable to fit exactly what your company needs. You can even use your own high-res logos. And as far as their floor tape, just listen to some of these facts. Mighty Line floor tape is 7 times thicker than the average floor tape. So this makes it more durable than other floor tapes. The beveled edge increases durability during forklift traffic, and the peel and stick adhesive removes easily. Best of all, it's all made right here in the USA. Look, I want you to grab a free sample of this stuff. Try it out for yourself. Get it in your hands, put it out in your shop, and try it for yourself. Go to mightylinetape.com/podcast. Fill out the form, get a free sample. While you're there, check out past episodes of the Safety Pro podcast right on that page. Incredible partners in safety. Help maintain the safety and health of your employees in your workplace with Mighty Line products. Go to mightylinetape.com/podcast. So shoot me your emails. Let me know what weird, strange postings you've had to put up in your workplace. Give me some suggestions for other topics for the podcast as well. Always looking for good ideas. Actually, this one, This one was an email I got a while back. It just got into the queue, and I never really got around to pulling together some examples of postings. But this is a good one. I like this one. So some of this housekeeping stuff we have to do as safety managers and employers that we sometimes forget about. And this is one of them. It's very important. So go ahead and get familiar with the postings and posters that you're required to display based on your state and local laws, certainly under federal regulations. But again, until the next Safety Pro podcast episode, please be safe.